Hi everyone. Today I have more side lighting than backlighting, but I guess that's a little better anyway. So this is the 1921 diary series, and today we have entries for the 21st and 22nd, and it's a day for lots of introductions, but the 21st is so short that I'm going to try to get through both it and the 22nd, which is much longer. Okay, I wanted to return to something of the other day when Dmitri had met with Mordvinov, actually General Count Mordvinov, in the morning to talk about his financial situation, and I remarked that he was looking for people who were either very wealthy or well connected to ask about loans. He didn't expect anyone just to give him money, although he would have liked very much to have gotten a job of some kind that would be compatible with his status as a Grand Duke, and also still at this point the possible future Tsar of Russia. So Mordvinov, as I found out, I have my Bible of the Russian emigre community in France by Alexander Zhivakov, Les Russes Blancs. Okay, so I should have looked up Mordvinov before. Oh, I've got a visitor. Let's see if you can see her. There she is. Okay, she seems to be curious about what's going on camera. Okay, so Mordvinov, it turns out, was in, even though he was a colonel, or I'm sorry, even though he was a general, was involved in finance and in banking, at least to the extent that he was on the board of directors of a bank that was in negotiations with banks in France to raise money for the White Russians in the Civil War, and to provide, I guess, some chance of French investors in Russian debt. Maybe some way to have recompense. I don't know about that side of things. But anyway, the fact is that Mordvinov was on the board of directors of La Banque Commerciale Russe pour le Levant. And he was there along, and Zhivakov describes this bank of having a board of directors that was a pinch of that had a pinch of the social directory of the Russian aristocracy. So Mordvinov was one of those, and also Prince Kochubey, who's mentioned in the diaries, and lo and behold, Alexander Polovtsov. So Alexander Polovtsov, the brother of Pete Polovtsov, who's one of Dmitri's closest friends. All right, it also had, Zhivakov calls them professionals, so financiers and bankers, professionals in that field, and he identifies them as Ashkenazi, Brodsky, Ginsburg, and Zussman. And so this is Dmitri's reference to Jews. It's not to Jews in general or Jews in a conspiratorial sense, but to members of the board of directors of this bank that he clearly was hoping would give him a loan. So that puts things in a little more perspective. Forgive me if I've spent too much time on that. And Mordvinov actually doesn't come into these diary entries on the 21st and the 22nd. But it's another Russian who arrives during Dmitri's at-home morning hours, Galeevsky. So Galeevsky came by to visit him in the morning, and Dmitri talked him into going for a walk in the Bois de Boulogne. So Galeevsky, we talked about before. He was, I believe so, he figures largely in the diaries. He was another Russian general, and he had been the military attaché, the Russian military attaché to the U.S. during the First World War, and was a founder of a monarchist group in 1919, a Russian monarchist group. So he has a lot of contact with Dmitri, and he comes by in the morning. They go for a walk because Dmitri says that he persuaded him, or that he talked him into going for a walk. And this is actually an interesting little aside with Dmitri, that he had a tendency to seemingly to get a little lonely sometimes during the day, and so he would just turn up unexpectedly at somebody's house. A lot of times they weren't home, or he would ask someone, he would go to the Ritz or someplace so he could find someone to play golf with. And in this instance, he asked Galeevsky to take a walk with him. So they do. And afterwards, he goes to lunch with Maria, not with her, but to her place to have lunch with her. Gulia is still in London trying to sell her jewels, or doing something with her jewels. And so Dmitri writes, in quotes, "Thank God it was just the two of us," end quote. And Maria had actually been spending most days with her friend Mimi Polovtsov, Pete's wife, but on this particular day, it was a Friday, she told Mimi not to come around because she wanted to spend some time just with her brother. So if there was anything significant about that, Dmitri doesn't mention it. So after lunch, he went home and did some writing. He'd had Galeevsky with him that morning, so he hadn't had time to do his usual writing. So he goes home and does that. And then he goes and has tea with a person named Charlie Brighton. And this is not a fellow, this is a woman, and boy, what a woman. Apparently she was quite attractive and really sort of putting herself out there, in the sense that she was kind of available to a certain category of man. So she was she had been with Fred Cripps, who was from an aristocratic British family and was involved in sports and politics, although he had a brother who was a very respected, highly respected person in politics, Sir Stafford Cripps. And I'm not sure, Fred was a little more of a playboy, and he had known Dmitri in Russia and played polo with him and done the usual things. And Charlie Brighton was also a friend of Irene Curzon's, who had been a friend of Dmitri's, and Dmitri remembered Irene talking about Charlie, but he met Charlie through Fred Cripps. So Irene and Dmitri had been even a little bit of an item for a while when he was first in London, and she was the daughter of the famous George Curzon, who'd been the Viceroy of India. And she had a very interesting life, and my godmother's husband, and my one of my closest friends in the world, Philip Goodman, when he was a boy, his best friend was Irene's nephew, Michael, and Irene was more or less raising Michael, and so Philip would be invited off to summer holidays with Michael and Irene Curzon. And so Philip and I have both, I mean, he was a teenager. Philip and I have both lamented the fact that neither one of us ever had a chance to, well, you know, as a teenager and not knowing anything about Dmitri, that he'd never had a chance to ask her about that. and he finds it quite amusing that she and Dmitri were together for a while. And of course, she died before I was born, so I never had a chance either. But that would have been fantastic. So Charlie Brighton. I had some more information about Charlie Brighton, and now I can't find it. Very typical from me, but I decided not to delay this reading this or doing this video until I could somehow recover my information of Charlie Brighton. I don't think she was from the demi-monde because of her connection, not so much with Fred Cripps, but with Irene Curzon. I think she came from some kind of privileged background, but she seems to have been quite a volatile person. And Dmitri was kind of drawn to women like that. He liked experienced women. He often liked women a little older than him, though I don't get the impression that Charlie was necessarily. And he liked women who could be a little pushy and have a tendency a little bit to scrap and be a little controlling. And it never ended up well when he was with a woman like that, but he kind of just, ended up with the same kind of woman next time. So he had met her slightly before going to France, and then they had this interval they ended up traveling together by chance to Paris, and they decided to hook up on the ferry ride. One or the other of them had a cabin, or they both had cabins, or I don't know, but they ended up in a cabin having sex, and Dmitri had a way of indicating this in his diaries without saying I had sex. He had kind of a coded way to get that across. So he and Charlie, and he makes a comment about her subsequently in his diaries, that she was the perfect woman for him in the sense that they were very sexually compatible, whatever that means. But, well, they had a good time together. But then then things took a turn for the worse, and both of them kind of lost their temper with each other, and Dmitri decided that she was sort of nasty and vulgar, and in this instance, but apparently they mended their fences, and she was in Paris and he was in Paris, and so he went to see her. They had tea together, but he writes that they got in a fight. Not surprising. Specifically, in his words, because she tried to forbid me to see any other girls. Okay, so that didn't go over well, and I'm surprised that she thought that she had that much sway over him, and that they were that serious in their relationship, and that happened a lot. It happened a lot with the women in Dmitri's lives, that they would believe that he was madly in love with them for whatever reason. I don't see him telling them that he was in love with them. That just would have been completely inconsistent with the way he was. But for some reason, they tended to jump to that conclusion, and it happened over and over again. One of the people it happened with was Lady Lucia Marling, the wife of Sir Charles Marling, whom Dmitri had taken refuge with in Tehran after the revolution. Okay, so I guess I am not going to do the diary entry of the 22nd, which is a long and important one. So please bear with me, and let's tackle that next time when we can give it the attention it deserves. And it is, of course, the day when Coco makes her first appearance. So I've been teasing that all this week, and we're finally there. And trust me, I didn't deliberately set out to say, I'm going to do the diary entries of the 21st and the 22nd, and then put it off a day, the 22nd. I just ended up talking more than I expected I would about Mordvino than Charlie Brighton and blah, blah, blah. So I will hopefully see you next time. Bye.